All right, good morning, everyone. It is 7 a.m., Friday, May 31st. I'm Anne-Marie Green. Donald Trump, guilty. For the first time in American history, a former president is convicted of felony crimes. And while this particular legal battle may be over, a new courtroom and political showdown is just starting.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial.
The only voice that matters is the voice of the jury, and the jury has spoken.
What happens next, and how could this impact the presidential election? This is the CBS Morning News. Well, we're going to be hearing from the former president soon because Donald Trump is expected to hold a news conference at Trump Tower after the unprecedented verdict from the jury in his hush money criminal trial. They found the former president guilty of all 34 charges in a scheme to illegally influence the 2016 election by suppressing negative information with a hush money payment to an adult film porn star. Outside of the courthouse yesterday, cheers and jeers erupted as crowds gathered to witness the historic moment. This morning, the verdict is splashed across the front pages of newspapers here and across the globe. And we have team coverage of the verdict for you with CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman standing by, and Jared Hill following the latest from just outside Trump Tower. And we're going to start with you, Jared. Bring us up to speed. Tell us about the verdict, the reaction, and so on.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, so Trump Tower was actually the site of a meeting in 2015 that played a crucial role during the trial, the place where this alleged catch and kill scheme happened. Now this is where we're expecting former President Trump to deliver his remarks after this historic conviction. Former President Donald Trump, now a convicted felon, is vowing to appeal.
I'm a very innocent man. We'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end.
Trump was convicted on all 34 counts of falsifying business records to hide reimbursements to former fixer Michael Cohen, who paid adult film star Stormy Daniels $130,000 in the run-up to the 2016 election. That money to keep quiet about an alleged sexual encounter with Trump. It took the 12 jurors 11 hours to reach a verdict.
The only voice that matters is the voice of the jury, and the jury has spoken.
In a statement, attorneys for Michael Cohen called the verdict a testament to his credibility, that credibility attacked by Trump lawyer Todd Blanche during the trial and again last night on CNN.
They looked past what we thought were fatal flaws in Mr. Cohen's story and his past, and they reached a guilty verdict.
With the fight out of the courtroom for now, Trump pivoted to politics last night, attending a fundraiser after his guilty verdict. The conviction puts an unprecedented spin on the presidential election.
The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
The Trump campaign almost immediately pushed fundraising messages, claiming he's a political prisoner. President Biden's campaign also fundraising with a message: there is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. Trump's sentencing is scheduled for July 11th, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention. And let's talk about July 11th, that sentencing. There's the possibility here that former President Trump could face everything from fines to probation, possibly even jail time. We're talking about 4 years for each one of these counts. Now, is that likely? Legal experts have been telling us at CBS News probably not. But again, we just don't know at this point. The judge is likely to consider a number of factors with sentencing, including the fact that former President Trump is not someone that has a criminal background. Back to you.
All right, Jared, thank you very much. So with me now, as we told you, in Studio 57, for more analysis, the CBS News campaign reporter and attorney, Katrina Kaufman. So, Katrina, you were actually in the courtroom at the time. What was it like? Could you see Trump's reaction?
Absolutely. It was so tense in that courtroom, Anne-Marie, and it was just powerful to hear the foreman say guilty on each of these 34 counts. It was just so quiet in that room. I was watching Trump's face, and he was just staring straight ahead for most of the time. And his eyes were so shut almost. I couldn't tell if they were closed or if he was squinting, but he just had this very tense look on his face, looking right ahead. And then after the foreman read that he was guilty on all those counts, the judge asked if they wanted to individually poll the jurors. And Trump's attorney said he did, so they went one by one through each juror to affirm that they agreed with this guilty finding. And Trump at that point did look at each juror who had found him guilty of these crimes. And also when they had walked in earlier, none of them looked at him. And I was also watching their faces as the original guilty verdicts were being read, and a lot of them were just kind of eyes cast down. I mean, I think you could really tell that they understood the gravity of this decision. I mean, this is huge. He's a former president. He's running for president now. These jurors, this was a huge task for them, and they took it very seriously. Trump walked just inches from me on his way out the door, and I've seen him a lot. I've seen him a lot in court, and I've never seen him with such a deep frown on his face, looking so distraught, followed by his attorney, by his son, Eric, who was sitting behind him as the verdict was read. And I saw him sort of slightly shake his head no as these counts were being found guilty one by one. So it was really a very powerful moment in that courtroom.
I can imagine. You know, the expectation is that Trump and his attorneys are going to appeal this. We were talking about that even before we knew what the verdict was going to be. There are probably a number of different ways in which they can do that. But when you think of an appeal possibility, what comes to mind?
I mean, there are a number of grounds that they can try to appeal on. Everything from during jury selection, they can try to contend that some of these jurors shouldn't have even been allowed on the jury. There were some that they really took issue with, but they weren't able to ultimately challenge in the end. They could talk about Stormy Daniels' testimony. I mean, there was a lot of detail shared about her encounter with Donald Trump that they took issue with. They even tried to get a mistrial during the trial on this basis, potentially aspects of the jury instructions. So there's a lot of potential foundation of points of appeal. We're absolutely expecting them to appeal, but they'll have to do that after the sentencing. Once the sentencing happens July 11th, they'll have 30 days to file that. And these appeals can take months or they can take years.
Wow. All right. I guess to be continued. Katrina, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
So while Trump allies call this a political persecution, the Biden campaign is already fundraising off the verdict. After the conviction, the campaign sent out a text to supporters that warns, quote, convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president. There is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. Meanwhile, Biden will be in his home state of Delaware with his family this morning, marking 9 years since the death of his son, Beau. He has stepped up his criticism of Trump in recent days, but sources tell CBS News that he is not expected to make any comments on the verdict today. Donald Trump's conviction is a first for a presidential election, but in a deeply divided America, it may not have a major impact on voters, especially in key battleground states like Pennsylvania.
I think that there are a lot of people out there that believe that this particular case was brought for purely political reasons.
There's a lot of things that he has done wrong, and I know maybe he has a lot of followers on that. They don't believe in that.
Some voters in Arizona also seemed unfazed by the jury's verdict.
Well, I can't say that I'm surprised. I was expecting it. So, actually,
I don't understand how he would possibly thought he would have got away with that. You know what I mean? So, justice is served.
No. I'm voting for Trump. Yeah. He will be my #1 ballot vote.
Voter reaction in Texas appears divided, with some saying the verdict could change their minds, while others think it's bogus.
It might affect my vote. Just simply, I don't think we need a convict in office.
I wasn't surprised, but I was still very disappointed.
I think it's all a sham. I think they shouldn't be able to run election interference the way they are.
In Florida, Trump supporters showed their support, gathering near the former president's Mar-a-Lago home after the verdict. We're also hearing from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. House Speaker Mike Johnson took to X after the verdict, saying that the trial was a, quote, political witch hunt sham, and urged Republicans to support the former president. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham posted, this verdict says more about the system than the allegations, and it will backfire tremendously on the political left. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell also came to the former president's defense, saying that the charges never should have been brought in the first place. Meanwhile, some Democrats were not holding back either. Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy said, quote, Donald Trump committed a crime. He got caught. He got convicted. That's the rule of law. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said no one is above the law. The verdict speaks for itself.